In Disney's Encanto, the members of the Madrigal family each receive a magical gift intended to help their family and community. However, throughout the movie, we see how these powers, although remarkable, begin to feel burdensome, even painful, for some of the characters. This has led many viewers to wonder, were these gifts really curses in disguise? The answer is no. The powers themselves were never curses. Instead, it was the pressure, expectations, and emotional struggles tied to their roles that caused them to suffer. The story ultimately shows that when a person is free to use their gifts authentically and with love and support, those gifts bring joy, not pain. A curse is something meant to bring harm or misfortune. It typically strips away a person's freedom, brings destruction, or causes emotional or physical suffering without purpose. A gift, on the other hand, is something given with love, intended to benefit the receiver and those around them. In Encanto, the magical gifts were clearly meant as blessings. They helped the family support their village, healing the sick, growing food, lifting buildings, controlling the weather, and more. These powers provided comfort, safety, and prosperity to the entire community. That is the opposite of a curse. Where the Madrigal family began to struggle was not with the magic, but with how they were expected to use it. Each family member felt their worth was tied entirely to how useful their gift was. This pressure turned their blessings into emotional burdens. Luisa, who has super strength, felt like she could never rest because everyone depended on her for everything. She internalized the idea that her only value came from her usefulness. Isabella, who could grow beautiful plants, was boxed into being perfect and only creating what others thought was beautiful. She lost her sense of creativity and personal identity. Pepa, who controls the weather with her emotions, was told to always stay calm. That made her fear expressing herself at all, which ironically made her gift harder to manage. Dolores, who has super hearing, constantly overheard things she didn't want to, carrying the weight of other people's secrets and issues. Bruno, who saw the future, was unfairly blamed for bad news. He was feared instead of appreciated, which led him to isolate himself. In all these cases, the problem wasn't the gift, but the way the characters were treated and the fear of not living up to expectations. By the end of the film, after the family confronts their struggles and reconnects emotionally, we see the characters begin to experience their powers in new, joyful ways. Luisa realizes she can take breaks and still be loved. Isabella explores wild, creative growth rather than just what's perfect. Pepa begins to accept her emotional nature. Even Bruno is welcomed back and allowed to be part of the family again, no longer feared for his visions. This shows that the gifts themselves were never the problem. They only became painful when tied to unrealistic standards, fear, and emotional disconnection. Once the family learned to value each other beyond what they could do, their gifts became sources of freedom again. Interestingly, Camilo, the shapeshifter, is a clear example that not all family members felt burdened. His gift allowed him to entertain, help others, and express himself. Because there were fewer expectations placed on him, and because he didn't tie his entire identity to being useful, he used his gift in a lighthearted and playful way. This proves that when a gift is used with freedom and joy, it stays a gift. Ultimately, Encanto isn't a story about magical powers turning into curses. It's a story about how love, support, and understanding are more important than any gift. The magic in Encanto only began to fade when emotional connection broke down in the family. When they repaired those relationships and learned to value each other simply for who they are, not what they could do, the magic returned, stronger than ever. Conclusion. The magical powers in Encanto were never curses. They were blessings that became burdens only because of fear, pressure, and emotional disconnection. The film teaches us that true strength comes not from our abilities, but from being loved and accepted for who we are. With support and self-love, even the most difficult gifts can become sources of joy.